Hello, Jack.
Hello.
Hi, thank you very much for joining the pod.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure to be on. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You are very, very welcome. Very, very welcome. We're really looking forward to finding out a bit more about yourself, your position and some advice that you can give as well into the industry. So to kick us off, the very first question, could you please introduce yourself, a bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello, I'm Jack Lawton. I'm an AI solutions architect at Aiimi. I've been in the industry now for coming up to 10 years, pretty much exclusively with Aiimi as it happens. So I joined Aiimi way back when as a graduate, and I was a data science consultant. So I've worked with Aiimi in consultancy for most of those 8 years. I've been working across various different sectors, mostly utilities, public sector, a little bit in finance as well. And very recently, I've been getting involved with the Aiimi Insight Engine, which is our product. It's very much sort of a passion project for us as Aiimi. It builds on our years of experience in enterprise information management and sort of the common problems that we see organizations having, and trying to build that actually into a product to help them be better at managing their information.
Amazing, thank you. Because that's where we met, wasn't it? At the Code for Her event at the Aiimi offices, which was a couple of weeks ago now. So yeah, the Insight Engine is definitely a passion of yours, which is great, 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 great to hear a bit more about it.
Yeah, I think
So
it's important with software. I think that you truly believe in it. I think as a consultant, I've been there, and what's always core of a consultant's mindset is doing what's right for the customer, right? And now moving into software, the software, it has to be what's right for the customers as well. So I'm very passionate about getting it right, delivering value for all of our customers. It's really, I suppose, when you look at it that way, it's an opportunity for me to not just deliver value for one customer at a go, but actually multiple customers all at the same time. So it's very exciting. It's always down in the office there in Milton Keynes. Tony Milton Keynes.
yeah, it's lovely, lovely offices. Yeah, really, really cool offices. Really, I like the surfboards that you've got up as well. Is it surfboards or skaterboards that you've got up on the wall?
Yeah, they're
The different colours that
skateboards.
you have.
Yeah, so it all drives some kind of us wanting to really embrace being in Milton Keynes. So we moved to Milton Keynes in 2020. Perfect timing just before the pandemic, but we got in there in 2020. We wanted to kind of embrace a bit of that Milton Keynes culture. And I think Milton Keynes is very much, or at least it was back when Milton Keynes was brand new, a hotspot for UK skateboarding. So you visit, there's so many wide pavements and underpasses and places where you can do skateboarding. So it's really sort of been embraced. I know just around the corner from our office, the old bus stop is now a dedicated skate park. I don't know if that was probably one of the first dedicated skate parks in the UK, I think. Yeah,
I
so we
didn't
really
even
want.
realise that. So that's where the idea comes from then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the skateboards on the wall for anyone who gets the chance to visit. We create a skateboard for all of our customers and partners. So we put one up on our wall, and we also send one off to our customers who usually really enjoy it. And there's quite a few in positions of pride at various different organisations up and down the country.
That's amazing. It's something a bit different as well, isn't it? So yeah, it's something that does really stand out. So I was really impressed by your drinks cabinet as well. I think there's like every soft drink you can ever imagine, in the in the fridges, which was lovely.
Yeah, on the right occasion, every not soft drink as well.
Yeah. But yeah, really nice. You're all very, very welcoming. So, what does the company specialize in? Just to get an oversight as to Aiimi, is it specifically AI, or just to get an overview as to the company and what you guys work on?
Consider ourselves an AI company. Our particular flavor of AI, I think I mentioned it before, is very much built on information management. So it's all about how we can use AI to help organizations better leverage the information, which essentially they often already have, right? A lot of information is hidden away within organizations. Either it's too difficult to find, or it's not permissioned correctly, or maybe people just don't know it's there in the first place. And our kind of approach and our attitude is making that information available.
Yeah. No, that really fascinates me, that especially big, large organizations where perhaps they struggle to
Fast
find
forward.
certain documents.
Yeah, exactly.
You provide that solution. No, that's great. So a bit more about the Insight Engine. So this is what you're working on. What's the vision for the Insight Engine?
So the Aiimi Insight Engine, as I mentioned earlier, it's been a very much a sort of a passion project for Aiimi for some years. When we started out, we were doing a lot of work in document management, open text content server, a lot of stuff that kind of feels a bit old hat these days. And we sort of saw a gap in the market really, which was actually a way to better find and manage information, not just across, content repositories and shared drives, but also data information as well. And one of our core company values is that we treat content and data the same, because at the end of the day, it's all information that you need to run a business, and Insight Engine very much treats them the same. It started out very much as an enterprise search solution. So the idea is you can hook it up to any system or a variety of systems. We've got a lot of out-of-the-box connectors, plus we've got the ability to configure things in manually as well. And then you can go in and very much treat it like kind of your Google for Enterprise, right? You've got all these things. They might be in SharePoint, they might be in OneDrive, they might be in a shared file or some other legacy system. And you can search and you can get results viewed across all of those. But we're very much finding, especially you get greater and greater quantities of information in there. Just basic search often isn't enough to be able to find what you're looking for, right? If you're just looking for keywords, actually there might be a whole bunch of documents that match the keyword and maybe just reference what you're looking for in passing. So we're very much looking to find ways to improve that search relevancy using AI. So ways we can enrich and tag documents. So what I'm working on specifically at the moment is ways we can identify what type of information a document or data is dynamically, so you can help filter down if you're looking for an electrical drawing. If we've already identified that, this file, be it a PDF, be it attached in an email or a document, it looks like an electrical drawing. And then if you're looking for an electrical drawing, you can much more accurately pin down what it is you might be looking for. And then building on that, obviously, beyond search, we want to get to a point where information is being pushed to people. You've got a meeting in your calendar, and that meeting's got a title and a description. You might have for example, this podcast, right? I probably could have had pushed to me before I jumped on this call today, a bit of documentation around Insight Engine that would help me better articulate the product and its capabilities. And it's taken out the need for me to do the search myself.
That's really clever. I love that. That's really, really clever. I think you were also saying how you may receive an email from a customer and the Insight Engine answers that for you and tries to get that information ahead of you replying to the email.
Yes, but I don't know if I quite advocate for automatically replying with AI, at least just yet at the moment. But it's a sort of use case that a lot of our customers are interested in, right? We work with a lot of engineering companies, and they're interested. They obviously have big incidents, operational jobs that they're doing that might have lots of different teams, technicians coming in and out, getting involved. You might have call center agents making comments on a job as well, where they're talking to customers. And it can be it's a big, long mess of information, essentially. And it'll be someone's job at the end of the day to summarize that, so that when the new team comes in on the next day, they know where they are and where they're up to. And that can be a long and time consuming job, right? And what that tends to result in, right, we're all human, is people just getting lazy and doing, the bare minimum required in order to tick that box, right? Okay, I've done my daily summary, that's off, I'm going home now. Whereas actually, if you start to leverage, especially, the capabilities of generative AI, it's hopefully not too hard to imagine that you can actually use an AI to quickly get a bird's eye view of all that information, perhaps pick out things that a human might miss just glancing over it. And even if it's not doing the job for you, it's providing you a start of a 10. It's doing that initial bit, and then you have the final human validation over the top of it.
I see. No, that's really key. Yeah. And the type of AI that it's using, so that you explaining that there's different types of AI. So the going back to basics, your results driven, and then your generative AI. What kind of tech is this using? Is this more, like you say, the generative AI model?
Yeah, so I'm talking about that kind of summarization. It doesn't necessarily have to be done with generative AI, to be fair. Well, I mean, at least with large language models, it is still generative AI, I suppose. But there are lots of different ways you can approach those problems, right? If you want to come up with, new content which obviously does not exist, you typically have to go with generative AI. And if you want to do more complex things, ask it more, intellectual questions, those large language models are very useful for that. But large language models, it's not being talked about enough, I would say, to be honest, are not cheap to run. They're not cheap to build. And they obviously come with huge amounts of risks as well, in that because they do generate content based on vast quantities of training data that you don't, you're using someone else's pre-trained model, right, that you've not seen. You don't necessarily know what they're going to come out with, and you're paying a lot for it. So they're not always the right solution. There are other models that can be used. So we see a lot of our customers interested in extractive AI. You can still ask it kind of free text questions, but what it will do is it will highlight text within a document or within a file and highlight what the likely answer to your question is. So if you've got, a very well structured document, maybe like a long legal document or something, and you maybe want to ask of that legal document, what was the settlement fee or who were the parties involved? You don't need to use generative AI to get that information out. You can use extractive AI to highlight that information. It's a lot cheaper to run. It's a lot sort of safer from a risk perspective because you're only bringing out information which is already in your document rather than generating new information.
No, that's great. Thank you. It brings me back to thinking about the lady that was at the Code for Her event, where she's a solicitor or reads lots of legal documents. There's just pages and pages. Wanted something that could basically break it down for her to the key points.
Yeah, I think that probably is the large language model territory thing. I suppose it's the scale that you want to do it at as well, right? If you've got a law firm where actually you can justify the cost in time saving of those large language model queries to your lawyers, to your solicitors, then actually it's probably a good move. Whereas maybe if you're an engineering organization and you want to have a bird's eye view of what different types of drawings or assets you have, then running a large language model over potentially thousands of documents might not be such a great idea. You might be better off using an extractive model or some other form of AI to tag up those documents.
And this is where your expertise comes in, because you'll know what solution is going to work well with the customers to provide the best solution and product for what their needs are. So really
very much so. Yeah, we try and, especially when you look at the AI landscape as it is today, it's evolving so quick, right? If we come back and look at this conversation in a year's time, I'm sure there'll be new forms of AI and ways of doing things that we haven't even imagined yet. And we're trying to build it in ways which is extensible and configurable to what a customer might want. So we're talking again about large language models, but also the same is true for the extractive models. We can plug into any provider. So you can either run, locally one of the open source models like Llama, Falcon, or we can plug into, OpenAI, Azure, cloud providers. And obviously there's pros and cons to having your own model, but having a cloud provider, both cost and performance wise, but it's providing that flexibility so that we can make that right choice for the customer.
Yeah, it's not like you've got one product and it's it's a tailor-made service, isn't it, and solution to whoever that is for. That's great. And the event we met at, so
found the event Code for Her,
and MK Milton Keynes is a popular destination for this tech hub and this tech community. So you're obviously getting involved in those events, and it's something that you're quite passionate about as well, isn't it? The whole sort of bringing the tech community together in Milton Keynes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it runs right through the organization, all the way up to the CEO, right? Steve's very passionate about MK and about Aiimi being a part of MK, right? And that's why we have opened out our office space for events like the Code for Her. We want to be part of that community and, really help drive MK as a tech hub, I guess. If you look back to last year when we had the AI summit at Bletchley Park, we ran a fringe event in the Milton Keynes office, which I think one of the best events we've ever ran. It was a fantastic event. I'm sure there's, if you Google it or look on our website, I'm sure there's plenty of content still available and amazing attendance.
What's it called, that one that you had? The fringe event, did you say?
Yeah, it was a fringe event for the AI summit. So I believe we called it Summit Decrypted. So obviously it had the world leaders and technology leaders down in Bletchley Park, which is obviously a stone's throw away from the office in Milton Keynes, and we spent a bit of time, watching the actual outcomes of that conference and kind of translating that into a way that we could play it back to an audience in the Milton Keynes office afterwards. And there was a fantastic buzz there. We got great attendance. I think we had the CEO of Bletchley Park himself actually turned up, and a couple of local MPs as well. So it was a really good event.
Amazing. You're really in that. It's great that you're really involved, in the whole community, the tech space, and in Milton Keynes. Definitely get a really good name for yourselves doing that. So when it comes to AI for businesses that are wanting to implement AI, it's obviously huge. It's just mind blowing, isn't it? This year, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. A lot of companies want to be using it as a tool. What is your advice to businesses looking at implementing AI?
I think it's probably to be mindful. So I think there's a lot of hype around AI, and a lot of that hype, it's not about AI in the general sense. It's about large language models, right, and generative AI, which, as I mentioned earlier, isn't necessarily always the right solution, right? I see organisations that are sort of getting a bit of a directive, which is, we want to make our shareholders happy, we want to please the board, they'd like to see us using AI, but actually they don't necessarily know how they can use AI, right? So I think just trying to imagine how you're going to use a large language model maybe isn't always the right approach, right? It's thinking about all the different ways that you can deploy AI. And if you do go down that large language model route, the most important thing to make sure is that you're being secure about the way you do it, right? If you use these third-party cloud services, I know Microsoft do, if you use the Azure service, they do promise not to persist and retrain on any data you do send them, but there's still an information security, risk of sending information externally that might not always fly with the security team. So you need to be mindful of that. Obviously mindful of the costs. I've spoken to organizations who want to train their own large language models and don't quite realize the actual computational cost that you need to do that. And then when you're putting that information into one of those large language models, or if you want to train, say, on your entire corporate landscape, so you can ask this large language model any question about your business and it'll have an answer for you. That obviously in principle is great and you can do it, but then who do you give access to that, right? Because there's a lot of information. If you're just giving it blanket access to large swathes of corporate data, how do you know for sure that everyone that's getting access to that model has access to know all of that information that you're empowering that model with? So be careful.
The access management, isn't it, and the security? But there'll be more policies put in, I'm assuming as well, the AI policies that companies place.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think organisations will be. Every security team must be talking about it, about how to manage it safely. I mean, our approach and our recommendation, certainly at the time being, is something called retrieval augmented generation. So you would use a generic pre-trained model trained on public information, something like your ChatGPTs of the world, but you would pass to it relevant contextual information depending on what question you're asking it. So we've got an enterprise search platform. So if you can actually, what you can do is you can do vector searches that translate a question into a useful query to find documents that are likely to answer that question. So we can do a retrieval of documents that are likely to contain the answer. Then we can send, however many documents you have the bandwidth for, essentially up to a large language model, get that large language model to then quickly review those documents with the context of your question and answer. So you can get back that correct, corporate information out of that language model, but you can trim the results that you're sending that model, so you know for sure you're only sending it files that the user that has asked that question has permission to see.
Ah, that's really, really clever. Yeah, it's very, very clever. Yeah, that's really interesting. The other thing I must touch on as well is the you spoken at the event about I don't know if are you allowed to speak about the Anglia Water project that you have with the piping and things.
Oh, is that the sensor positioning work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explain a bit about that and how that works and what. yeah, what a difference it made. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my my favorite projects. So that was probably more of a traditional AI machine learning project that I did with Anglian Water. They were interested in understanding where on their network they could put these hydrophone sensors. So in order to tackle leakage on the Anglian Water network, which has been obviously a huge problem for them, they've got kilometers of pipe that they obviously is underground. They don't necessarily know exactly what condition it's in, and there may well be leaks on it that could be too small to clearly see from the surface. So they've got these hydrophone sensors that they want to deploy, or in fact they have deployed now across their network, that will listen to the sound of a leak in the water column in a pipe. But obviously they can only listen so far along a pipe. They kind of have a characteristic distance they can hear across, and you need two of them on either end of the pipe to correlate the time difference to work out where that leak is. As you can imagine, they're quite sophisticated bits of kit, and it doesn't make them very cheap.
Yeah.
So they wanted to be able to cover their entire network, or at least I believe that the target was 50% of their network, 50% of target areas, something like that, with these hydrophone sensors. But they wanted to use obviously as few as possible, but still get that 100% coverage. So they approached Aiimi or myself to have a look at ways we could optimize and automatically come up with deployments for those sensors across the network. So I used a variety of mathematical techniques. Sort of core principle was something called graph theory, which is essentially treating the water network as a mathematical structure. And then we could work out, based on various different optimization techniques, where the optimal places were to minimize that number of sensors. We trialed that against an actual human engineer doing the same deployment. Obviously takes a lot longer to come up with comparable results. We found that not only obviously we were able to massively bring down that time investment cost of producing those deployments, but we were able to use it was like 15% on average less sensors to cover an area, both of which combined were an enabler to allow them to do that rollout across their network. And in sensor costs alone, it would have saved them, it was over $250,000, but I can't remember the exact amount.
Wow.
Massive savings. So the pumping for that efficiency
of a project that they're wanting to do to make sure they're going about it the most cost-effective way. And yeah, obviously massively save them money. Obviously they've paid for your services, but overall they've made a saving. So yeah, it's really clever when you looked at the map and you mapped out all the pipe and then where most of the leakages are happening, and then they're the ones that they can then fix, you know, working out from the sound which ones are leaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame I don't have my slides. I think it is on YouTube somewhere. I did it at a Google event in the Aiimi office a couple of years ago, I think. But yeah, that was a great project. Yeah, really good project.
Thank you. No, that's great.
Sales. Yeah, working in data science, it's good fun, right? They come to us for the kind of the analytical expertise, but it's not to undersell actually the involvement of the Anglian Water engineers on that project as well, right? I'm not an expert in hydrology. I'm not an expert in water engineering. So actually the engineers were working very closely with that on as well to build in the appropriate business rules for how those sensors behave, right? You can't get to the answer with pure, maths and data science alone. You have to look at the engineering angle as well.
Yeah, the engineering and work together with the experts. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, very clever, very clever. And so you, with your role being, so you're an architect, so you obviously design the solutions, working very, very closely with the customers. How did you get to the position that you're in now? Like, did you work your way up from sort of development, or sort of like, how did you get to where you are today in your career?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Yeah. A part of it obviously was luck. So I studied physics at university, and I went out and I decided for some reason that I wanted to work in IT. Ended up at Aiimi and working in data science, right? I think actually IT and physics combine quite nicely into data science. I like to see it as kind of the, you look at data from first principles and understand how it behaves in a very similar way to how you approach a physics problem. So I do really enjoy that. I spent a bit of time working with broader teams, with obviously very senior data scientists, to sort of build up sort of my chops in delivering those kind of analytical solutions. Because obviously you go so far as a data scientist, and you also have to look at how you not only come up with those clever mathematical models, but how you deliver them into production to actually realize the value in that analytical approach. And so actually I found myself, and I'm sure a lot of data scientists would agree with me, doing more data engineering than data science. So, a lot of building pipelines, manipulating data, connecting to source systems, and you actually end up seeing a lot of the kind of life cycle of a data and analytics project. And so over the years of experience, I found myself more naturally sort of sitting in that architect role, whereas sort of saying, right, well, from the experience of having delivered this at XYZ different customers before, this is the best approach. And then that obviously has led through into my current role, which is specializing in AI, right, which is really, I suppose, building on my experience, obviously, as a data scientist, but for us as a business, right, it's capitalizing actually on the current rapid growth we see in the AI sector, right, and it's putting our best people forward. Don't blow my own trumpet too much.
No, that's great. Thank you. It's that really sort of mathematical physics, logical modeling, analytical background that's led you into, the AI that you're in today, because there'll be a lot of people that want to get into it as a career. And one of the benefits of the podcast that we're doing here at Tech Recruits is the insight into, how you can get into certain careers, where to start, how you can progress, to certain positions. If there's relevant sort of courses, training, all that sort of thing for people that wanting to get into it. Is there any advice from yourself to people that want to get into AI? Any particular sort of like courses or experience, or what would you recommend to anyone that's interested in it as a career?
Yeah, I think I'd say, there's a lot of stuff, and this is true for so many subjects these days, but I think obviously especially so for data and for AI. Is there's so much stuff out there on the internet, and so much of it is free, right? I actually use YouTube quite a lot as a learning resource, right? There's so much stuff on there that actually you've got very clever people who work in the industry who are just happy to share their knowledge, right? And when you look at, AI, right, that is evolving so fast, right? Nobody has, 10 years experience in large language models because they didn't exist 10 years ago, right? I mean, people don't have 5 years experience in them, right? There's so much stuff out there, and it's so easy to get up to a standard that actually is, pretty good, and, you can start delivering some really powerful stuff, right? If you really want to get into large language models, it's actually incredibly easy to set one up on your own computer. So I've got a not too powerful laptop, and I can run the Llama 2 large language models on it. I think there's a website called Hugging Face, which is fantastic for data science, machine learning. And there's a few pages on there. I think it's a guy called The Dude, if I remember correct. And he's created up there a bunch of different sizes of these Llama models that you can download and set up to run on your laptop, on your GPU if you've got one, or if you get one of the really small ones, you can run them on a CPU. I believe somebody got one running on a Raspberry Pi recently. So it's all very possible, and it's all becoming more and more accessible. Formal education is obviously great, but if you want to get up to speed on something quite quickly, there's a lot of resources out there.
So YouTube's a good one. What are those other two sites you mentioned? Huggy, did you say? Huggy.com, is it?
Hugging Face.
Huggy and Face. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The logos, I think it's like a little hugging face emoji, but it's a very popular site.
Yeah, there's lots available for people to look into it, isn't it? And learn. But would you say that the more experience that you've got from doing it and practicing and downloading this language model at home, so the more practice you've got, the more you get to, improve your skills on it? So like, so you don't need to do it as like a certificate or a course. It's more just, down to practice and working with it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but for me personally, I very much believe in learning by doing. There's nothing better than having an actual problem that you can have a go at and actually start using these technologies in the wild, right? You can sit down there all day with a textbook and learn the theory about how machine learning models work. But until you kind of try it on a real problem and test your understanding, you don't truly understand it, I find. That, to be fair, that can be things like as well. Maybe I wouldn't advocate this for some of the more complex models out there these days, but certainly if you're interested in, the core foundations of machine learning, things like decision trees and regression models, actually sitting down there and coding your own decision tree or regression model on your computer can be a really valuable exercise in understanding what's going on there. Not that you would ever use that in production, right? You'd use the more robust ones that, smarter minds.
It's a training exercise, yes, to go get your head around it and learn it. Putting it into practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, like obviously it's great. It's been great for me. I've been lucky to work for a consultancy with such varied clients. It means that I've had a lot of different projects over the years where I've needed to use lots of different techniques, which work well for honing those. And obviously, I suppose if you're not working in the industry already, it can be quite tricky to find those projects. But even honestly in an interview, if someone's got a little pet project, like maybe if you're into fantasy football or something, and actually you've said, right, actually, can I use data science analytical techniques to try and make my fantasy football team better? That's a good little project that if you're sufficiently into fantasy football or something like that, you could really sort of be passionate about.
You can apply it to sort of games, you can apply it to sort of health and nutrition, or some people sort of like the sort of, is it like trading and things online? There's various different projects you could have a go at, isn't there, to sort of practice it?
Yeah, trading's a good one actually. I see a lot of data scientists that have joined us over the years have sort of got passionate about it through thinking about ways that they could automate trading algorithms.
Yeah, that's clever. Yeah, that gets really interesting. No, that's really good advice. Thank you so much, Jack, for joining us today, and sharing your knowledge and your advice and your insight into everything. So really appreciate your time to join us today.
Yeah, no, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Emily.
You're welcome. All right, speak to you soon.
All right, speak soon.